Welcome to Tomorrow Science, Discovery 1, Episode 7. My name is Benjamin. I will be that lab partner that talks a lot and then doesn't do any of the work but takes all of the credit in the end. And I will be joined by Jade, Athena, and we've got Elisa out on the observation lounge. Jade, what do you have first up for us in news?
Neanderthal brains!
All right, and Athena?
Saving future Sudans.
And let's head out to the observation lounge and check in with Lisa.
I have an interview with Moss from Canaria talking about cool future wearable technology.
Oh, that sounds awesome. All right, all that and so much more coming up on this episode of Tomorrow Science. Now, you can tell that I don't normally do science because in the chat room, Jarny's off of Twitch says, wasn't it experiment instead of episode for science? And the answer is yes, it's Discovery 1, Experiment 7. My bad, sorry about that. I do want to thank all of the citizens of tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are our Escape Velocity citizens. These are people who contribute $10 or more to this specific episode. To find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head out over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's get straight into science news. I believe you got the first one, Jade.
And boy, am I excited, because we're throwing it back, way back. We're going way retro, like maybe 40,000 years ago, retro. Yes, scientists are actually growing mini Neanderthal brains in petri dishes to try to figure out why our poor evolutionary cousins went extinct all 40,000 years ago. And there's actually a few popular hypotheses as to how they might have gone extinct, including everything from climate change to excessive interbreeding, blah, blah, blah. But director, look, it was a different time back then.
It was about 40,000 years ago, yeah.
But director of the stem cell program at UC San Diego, Allison Moultrie, and his team are looking to explore one possibility: brain differences between Neanderthals and our very own human ancestors. So does size matter? Maybe, and that's exactly what they're looking to find out. Researchers were able to use previously extracted and sequenced Neanderthal DNA to compare its genome to that of humans and grow these tiny brains. What you're looking at now is a computer simulation of what we think Neanderthal brains might have looked like. And after surveying about 200 candidate genes, they decided to focus on NOVA1. It's a master gene expression regulator linked to various neurological conditions, including autism and schizophrenia. But the interesting thing is NOVA1 is actually extremely similar in both humans and Neanderthals. The only difference is a single base pair between them. So using good old CRISPR and brain model technology, or BMT, not to be confused with BLT, scientists were able
One
to...
is tasty, one is not.
I'll let you decide which one. Scientists were able to edit and quote-unquote Neanderthalize genes in human pluripotent stem cells. These are handy little guys that can develop into any cell in the body. And 6 to 8 months later, you have yourself a fresh new organoid, or Neanderoid, as they are lovingly calling them. These little brains are equipped with up to 400,000 brain cells, and these tiny brains can only grow to about ½ centimeter in size, but that's still pretty cool considering you can literally see them with your naked eye. However, unlike our fancy, top-of-the-line, good old organic nature-made brains, the Neanderoids do not have an active blood supply, meaning they must rely on diffusion to get their nutrients, which means they do have to stay quite tiny. Moultrie and his team discovered that as the brains matured, they actually took on a popcorn-like shape, kind of elongated. And this was very distinct from human brains that have been grown in the lab, which actually grow to be pretty round. They also noticed that there were less synaptic connections, which is how neurons talk to each other. Interestingly enough, the Neanderthal brains were quite similar to that of many human brains grown from folks with autism. And although Moultrie does stress that they don't know what that similarity means, if it means anything, they just thought it was a neat observation. And as far as growing organs in labs has progressed, it's also important to note that this type of research is still quite young and that there are still a few notable setbacks to studying lab-grown brains. according to Svante Pabo, director of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, which is a man I have quoted many times, his team is also growing mini Neanderthal brains, so this is actually kind of a global effort. He notes that organoid brains are far from being able to tell us how adult brains function. And just like with any other CRISPR experiment, unintended mutations can occur. So, despite these potential setbacks, this is not stopping Moultrie and his team from their ambitious pursuit. They actually want to create an even bigger organoid by creating bio-printed artificial blood vessels so that they can sustain a bigger size, and they can actually progress their studies with them. They're taking the research even further, get this, they're connecting robots with the mini brains to measure their electrical brain signals. Yes, we are going to have Neanderthal robots.
Only good things will come of that.
Only amazing things.
This will not be the end of civilization at all. Don't you worry.
Rise of the planet of the Neander robots. And what this is going to do, it's actually going to create a learning feedback loop, and this is going to help the brain direct the robot to explore its surroundings and allow scientists to test their ability to learn, so we can actually take a peek into what the behavior might have been like. So by using the latest in gene editing technology in conjunction with prehistoric DNA, researchers are able to bridge the past to the present, potentially giving us a profound insight into what makes humans human, and why we were favorably selected to survive, much to our poor evolutionary companions' demise. Or, at the very least, we're getting pretty darn good at growing brains in the lab, and I don't know about you, but I think that might come in handy when the zombie apocalypse finally hits.
Oh, we could just feed them the lab-grown brains. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it'll be sold in a store near you soon, in the refrigerated section.
In the refrigerated section. Comments from the chat room. Kay McCoy asks, and this is a couple animations back, is that, oh my God, is that big white thing an animation of CRISPR? And that was with the blue animation. Do you have that still?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So basically, that was a simulation of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that big white thing. Yeah. What are we looking at here?
So essentially, what you're looking at is a strand of DNA, and what it does is it unwinds it, as you can see here, and then I wish I could explain it a little bit better, but I will say that I cannot. But essentially, it targets Pam, whoever Pam is, it targets Pam, and it munches on it. See that there? And you're able to, I guess, do what you need to do with Pam's help. She's great.
Thanks, Pam.
I
feel like we need to move on, and someone will help us out in the comment section of the archive of this video.
Nailed it.
We'll bring yeah, okay.
Definitely
No, you're not off the hook yet. Well, quite. Zibui from the chat room asks, can I get 1,000 mini brains instead of my one big one? Parallelization is the future. More copies are better. Yeah, actually, I wonder if that'd be true. It's not quite to the point of that story, but
1,000 mini brains.
yeah, I wonder if a bunch of little mini brains is better than one giant.
Absolutely not.
All right, moving on. Athena.
Yes.
Saving future Sudans.
Yeah, so speaking of, I guess, extinction, we were talking about Neanderthals. So a lot of you guys might have heard about the white northern male rhino named Sudan, who passed away in March. He was the very last of the male in his species. There's only 2 female left. And what scientists are now doing is they actually are creating an embryo of this. So a little bit of backstory is for the past 10 years, there was numerous efforts to try and save the white northern rhinos through breeding attempts with the 4 surviving rhinos at the time, including the 2 females that are actually still alive today, and they are the very last of their kind. But they were not able to actually be successful in any of these breeding attempts. So what scientists are now doing is they've created a hybrid rhino embryo. So back in 2015, there's a conservatory called the Olpejeta Conservatory. They partnered with Tinder, of all companies, to actually raise money for this research. Yeah, Tinder. Yeah.
Tinder.
So
I mean, I guess I see a little bit of a parallel here, but all right.
They actually called Sudan when he was still alive the best bachelor around. So there was supposed to be like a play on, I guess, because the whole purpose of Tinder is trying to find your match. So they were actually trying to find a way to obviously raise money to help save the species because he was the last male rhino. So this is actually the first time, though, that scientists have created a rhino embryo in a lab. And it was actually done by something called artificial reproductive technology, which injects preserved sperm from the northern white rhino into the eggs of a southern female white rhino. So by doing this, they were able to obviously to grow this lab-grown embryo. And the goal will be to eventually implant these embryos into a female southern white rhino. The reason, again, they're not using these two female northern white rhinos that are still alive is because they're very old. They're not able to actually be like the surrogate mother or actually be able to give birth to any babies. So what they're doing is they want to actually try and implant these embryos into a southern white rhino, and then when the baby is born, it'll be a hybrid of both the northern and the southern rhinos. And because of this, it's actually going to be containing the DNA of the northern white rhino, meaning it may be able to serve as a better mother to actually carry the lab-grown embryo. And what their goal is through many, many years, through this process and many generations, they're hoping that eventually a pure breed rhino will actually be born. So what actually you see here in this image is the process actually happening. So you have the cells and the cell growth, and that's the merging of the sperm cell and the egg. And this is just like throughout the whole process of them growing the embryo itself in the lab. So honestly, right now, with around only 20,000 southern white rhinos that are left, it's a really great opportunity that science might be able to preserve the northern white rhino's genes by creating the hybrid of the northern and the southern rhinos through these lab-grown embryos. It's going to take, again, like I said, generations of reproduction and the artificial reproductive technology, but it is a great way to possibly save the species. And also, there's one other method they're looking to do if this one doesn't work out. Yeah, this one is, so this is Ringo. So he's a southern white rhino, and he's meeting Sudan on the left, again, the last male northern white rhino who died. And so they actually got to meet each other, which is like super, super adorable. But one other method that scientists are looking to do to try and maintain the pure northern white rhino species is through harvesting the preserved sperm and eggs of the northern white rhinos. And they would combine them in a lab process. And within 3 years, they say that the northern white rhino calf could be born. So that's kind of interesting. But again, they're really trying to look at actually growing the embryo, implanting it into a southern female, and because once the hybrid is born, it'll contain that DNA of the northern one. If it then gets implanted with the pure northern embryo, then essentially after generations, it can birth a pure northern rhino and possibly save the species. So to me, this is a great hope for preserving the species that are going extinct, but something to point out. Yeah, and this is Ringo again. Another aw. This one is Ringo again. But I just wanted to kind of point out too is that in 2013, 13 rhinos were actually killed through poaching, and now in 2017, well, we're in 2018 now, but in 2017, there's been around 1,000 rhinos that were killed. So right now, it's just poaching is such a big problem, but I mean, I have hope that not only science is trying to obviously preserve these, but also there's a lot of conservatories out there that are trying to maintain the species and trying to take care of other rhinos that are out there. I think there's only around 29,000 rhinos on the entire planet, including all the different types of subspecies. So yeah, but I think this is really crazy to think that they're growing an embryo in a lab and then implant that into...
Once again, that will not be the end of humanity as we know it. Nothing bad can happen from that whatsoever.
New addition to a zoo near you. Just kidding.
A comment from the chat room with regards to the Twitter part of this story, which was swipe right if you like the rhino. I thought that both Jane and I saw that comment and we busted out laughing. We had to like silently laugh because you were doing your story. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Look at these. Yeah, next
you guys
up,
are funny.
Mammoth.
Yes, absolutely. Next up.
Well.
Oh, let's lighten the mood of the room a little bit, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's talk skin cancer.
Yes. Speaking of light from the sun. And also, it's like 3,000 degrees outside, so there's that. So really? Yeah, actually, this is actually kind of a cool story about skin cancer. As some of you may know, skin cancer is actually the most common cancer in America. Actually, 3 million cases are diagnosed every year, and 1 in 5 Americans are diagnosed in their entire lifetime, with 1 dying every hour. So it's a pretty pervasive issue, and skin cancer is only going on the rise. However, a recent reporting published in JAMA, actually it's pronounced JAMA, I just wanted to say JAMA for some reason, JAMA Dermatology by Dr. Anna Nichols from the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center indicates that the HPV vaccine Gardasil, of all things, may be an effective non-invasive treatment for certain types of skin cancer. So for some of you who might not know what Gardasil is, it's an HPV vaccine that's administered to younger people, or actually it could be people of any age, but it was introduced in 2006. But they're slowly starting to find other uses for it. See, a little background on skin cancer, it can manifest in 3 different ways: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and the deadliest form, melanoma. All 3 types can spread throughout the body and cause irreparable damage, disfigurement, and ultimately death. Basically, it occurs when extensive UV radiation from that darn old sun damages DNA and skin cells.
Stupid Daystar.
It's not as cute as this looks, but I thought this is a pleasant way to portray something rather unpleasant. And the usual course of treatment requires surgery and or radiation, and it can be very invasive and very tough. My own father suffered from it on his face. It's not a fun time at all. Both of which can take immense tolls on the body, particularly in older patients. Enter Gardasil, which is a great superhero name. A vaccine first introduced in 2006, formulated, just get a giant G on your chest. Yeah. Carrying around a syringe. There it is. Yeah. So, yeah, originally formulated in 2006 to protect against the human papillomavirus. This is by far the most common STD in America, as well as around the world, and it is the #1 cause of cervical cancer. This vaccine was introduced to try to combat rising numbers in cervical cancer, which can be quite deadly for women. New findings have shown that HPV can actually affect how skin cancer develops, leading scientists like Dr. Nichols to use Gardasil as a potential treatment. This actually proved successful in 2017 when 2 patients with basal and squamous skin cell cancers were successfully treated with the vaccine. 2 years ago, we have this sweet old lady, a 97-year-old patient whose leg was covered in tumors, consulted with Nichols about her severe condition. Surgery and radiation were clearly not options, so Nichols instead opted to try the Gardasil vaccine as treatment.
I think we had a really reasonable expectation and good data that this was actually going to, at the very least, do no harm to this patient, at the very least, and possibly provide some benefit. To have this type of result in such an advanced patient, I think, though, is beyond all of our expectations.
So what he was referring to is basically she was injected with 2 doses of Gardasil in her arm, as well as directly into the tumors themselves. And who you just saw was Dr. Tim Ioannidis' suggestion. Basically, he thought, well, if we just inject the tumors directly as well, that could actually have a positive impact. And the treatment was technically considered off-label because obviously this has only been approved for the prevention of cancers in reproductive organs, not necessarily skin cancer. But the results nonetheless were remarkable, as you can see here before and after. 11 months later, most of her tumors have actually disappeared. And to this day, it's almost been about 2 years since this happened, she has yet to have another recurrence. She's now well on her way to celebrating her 100th birthday. So you go, girl.
Decided to try it and it worked. It just killed them all off.
Oh, doesn't that just make you warm and fuzzy inside? And despite being...
When she says, it killed them all, you're like, oh, that's warm and fuzzy.
It killed them all. Despite being one of the most controversial vaccines to date, basically Gardasil continues to prove its efficacy in not only preventing cervical cancer, but it's also showing some progress in combating other types of cancer, skin cancer, which is, of course, quite deadly in and of itself. And although these case studies illustrate how useful Gardasil can be, it's important to note that no controlled clinical trials have been done yet. However, if we get enough of these case studies, perhaps that would be grounds to further this research. I've always been a huge fan of the formulation of Gardasil when it was introduced in 2006. I thought it was an amazing introduction to society, and the fact that it's helping these other terrible types of cancers say bye-bye. Go team. Go Gardasil.
Go Gardasil.
Yeah.
So from the chat room, Stratty asks, and I'm not entirely sure the basis of the question, but is there evidence for melanoma-type skin cancer? As like,
as in, has Gardasil been able to treat it?
I think that's the question because
they haven't tried it yet.
The question as it stands doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah,
yeah, so they've actually only tried this on the basal, I just think of the herb. The basal and the squamous skin cancers, they actually have not tried it on melanoma yet. As far as I know, only 3 patients have been kind of used with this treatment, so perhaps if they get another patient who has a more elevated, such as melanoma, then maybe.
All right.
Not yet.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
A lot of images too.
And now let's eat some light because we were complaining about the Daystar. So,
yes.
yep,
Okay. Protein. So we're gonna talk to you guys about protein. I made sure to check my pronunciations this time on all of them. So there's a specific type of protein that's found in like plants and microorganisms that's known for eating light in order to survive. And they actually collect the sunlight and the energy, and they transfer it into. They transfer it into energy to then survive. So there's an example of a protein that's that they've actually found recently. It was rhodopsins, and they bind with a type of vitamin A called retinol to capture light. And retinol, just like the eyeball, if you guys recognize that, it's actually a type of protein that's found, so the rhodopsins are found in the rod cells of our eyes, which helps us see in darker places. So as you can see in this diagram, it's like you can see where it's pointed cone and then you see rod. So those are two different, as opposed to where the rod cells are actually photoreceptor cells that are found in the outer parts of the retina, used in the peripheral vision, and they allow, as I said, for the eyes to be able to see in lower lit environments, in comparison to the cone cells, which again you see in this picture, which are the visual photoreceptors that function in fully lit places. But what's super cool about the rhodopsins is that it can help small organisms like algae and bacteria make chemical energy by absorbing light. So, and here actually is an image of so this next one that's going to be coming up in a second is an image of a confocal laser scanning micrograph, and it shows the localization of the rhodopsin protein in fungi cells. So it's not coming up. There we go. Okay, that's it. So this one, it's really cool. So again, it's actually a laser scanning micrograph, and the reason it's green is because it's illuminated by a green light, and it shows how the rhodopsin protein in fungi cells is actually like triggered in this situation, and then it actually can convert the light, and then it actually is being used in the fungi in order to survive and grow. So a bunch of researchers were on the hunt for a second type of rhodopsin when they found something really interesting. They actually went to the Sea of Galilee in Israel. I just like saying that, the Sea of Galilee in Israel.
You're dancing when you say it, too. They can't see you doing it, but you do a little dance.
It's a pretty melodic word.
It's just like, it sounds like it should be like a Disney song or something in like a movie. Okay, anyway. Okay, so they collected DNA samples, and what they found was an entirely new light-eating protein. And it's confirmed to be actually another type of a rhodopsin. It's just not one that's been recorded or observed before. And they named this one heliorhodopsin. And what's really cool is this newly found protein seems to be found everywhere on our planet, like bacteria and algae, and also was actually found in viruses in the soil and in every major body of water on Earth. And they also were found in microorganisms and bacteria that were never thought before that could actually sense light until right now. So seeing that these protein are able to convert like literally a photon of light into electrochemical signal, the researchers' goal and applications for this finding can be for such as data storage and optogenetics. Now, optogenetics is a technique that uses light to control and manipulate cells in living tissue. Scientists have actually been able to turn on and off neurons by using light to activate them. So you could guess, because it's neurons, the purpose of this would be for treatment like neurological disorders like Parkinson's disease or depression. Now, they still have a long way to go. There's a lot they don't actually know about this new protein, but I still think that it's pretty interesting that they're going to be actually using this, and that's obviously a little mouse picture right there that they're testing out that type of technology. You just wanted a cute mouse picture in the show. I did. The thing is, I was actually in my Uber ride, which, by the way, I had the same Uber driver that I did from January. But anyway, and I was looking up a little bit on optogenetics, and I wanted to try and find an image for you guys, and then this one came up, and I'm like, oh, it's a little mouse with like a glowing head. That's so cute. But that's actually like a little fiber optic like implant that he has in his brain to actually activate. So when the light's on, it activates the neurons, turns the neurons on, and obviously when the light's off, it's able to turn off because of that type of protein that's found, and it detects the light.
Wait, you said this could also be used for data storage?
Yeah, that was something that I was reading on. I actually didn't do too much research as to what specifics, so I can't answer
Well, if
that
it's an
question.
on and off, maybe like a 1-0 binary kind of thing.
I would assume so, yeah. Like they probably would be able to use it. I mean, I feel like it makes more sense to use it in biological things, but I don't see why not that it can't be used in yeah, like.
Well, biological data storage is an interesting idea,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Just kind of
I'm just gonna download some
a little bit.
knowledge.
That would be
Well, I don't
so
even know that
great.
that would like right into your brain, but like if you wanted to store data, almost I would say like on that's we're getting
So
way
like
off
a
topic.
USB
yeah,
implanted in your arm.
credit card in your
Just like,
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
or, you know,
biometrics.
yeah,
Just like-
something
yeah.
like that. I
I
don't
just
know.
started
If,
doing Apple Wallet for the first time. That was great.
yeah?
Yeah.
It's nice, right?
It's awesome. I was
Okay,
like,
we're,
whoa.
we're way off topic. And speaking of going
Yeah.
off topic, before we go into break, one last comment from the chat room based on your story, which was a citizen 91232 said cancer murder would be a great band name.
And so it begins.
so it
I'll play
begins.
bass. Do we have a professional
You're gonna play bass?
triangle
I could, yeah, I could
player?
drum. I just want to bang on things.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Lisa will be on the observation lounge talking with Alex Moss about wearable tech. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We've always looked to the stars. They guide us, give us comfort, help us find our way. We see ourselves out there. When we look up, it inspires us. And we long for something we don't yet know. We yearn to go there. So, we venture forth.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
Many think we stopped exploring. But we know our journey didn't end.
T-minus 1 minute.
We've only just begun.
Orion is functioning perfectly at this point.
Come with us and explore tomorrow.
You got to see the Mars helicopter?
Yeah.
Was it awesome?
It's really cool.
From like were you at JPL kind of thing? Or
Yeah, so a good buddy of mine works
Hello.
for...
oh, wait, hang on. Sorry.
Sorry.
One second.
A good buddy of mine works for SpaceX. Well, you work for SpaceX
Yeah.
as well. So he got his buddy a job at JPL, and then he worked on the helicopter, and then it took...
That's really awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. It looks like something you could buy out of Target or like a toy store, but like way cooler. Yeah, it's
Sweet.
super light.
So
yeah.
I can go to Target and find it.
All right, before we get into our interview, I did want to give a shout out to all the patrons of tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are Escape Velocity citizens. I said patrons again. Citizens. The Escape Velocity citizens. These people have contributed $10 or more to this specific episode. We also have our Orbital citizens. These people have contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. To find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. We're going to head it out over to Lisa on the observation lounge to talk with Alex Moss about wearables. Lisa.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks to Alex Moss, the CEO of Canary Technologies, for taking time out of your Sunday morning, stupid o'clock Sunday morning, to talk to us today.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everyone.
It's afternoon over here. It's 2 p.m., but that's time zones for you. We just all need to be in the same time zone. So I wanted to start off by kind of the big question. The question of like, why did you kind of start Canaria in the first place? Like, what problem is your company trying to solve?
Well, let me divide that into two sections. In essence, the problem that we're trying to solve is making predictive medical devices a reality. So imagine a medical device that your friend, your grandmother's wearing, and it can tell you 10 minutes before you have an epileptic fit. So you can sit down, have that safely, not get knocked unconscious. The boundaries of this new scientific field, which are opening up just now, are truly limitless. And it boggles the mind as to what this is, what this could lead to in the future. But right now, we're working on predictive cognitive fatigue, but that's one half of that answer. The first one, where did this start from? This came out of a NASA hackathon in 2016, where I met my co-founder, Dr. Robert Finian, and we came up with the original concept and proof of concept for the Canaria earpiece. Now, the original earpiece was, as it is now, continuous biometric monitoring for use aboard the International Space Station, and it was also a dual carbon dioxide monitor, as in the International Space Station, there are serious problems with ventilation, and in the zero-G environment, if you're just breathing in and out, you're going to end up with a hazardous pocket of CO2 directly in front of you. Now, right now, there's no way to detect that, or rather, certainly 2 years ago, there wasn't a way to detect that, which is why the Canaria earpiece kind of came into existence. Now, through the original design process, so the intense 48 hours of the hackathon, it became very obvious very quickly that, well, if we're gathering continuous biometric data based on PPG signals, which I'm happy to explain in just a moment, why not add a machine learning element to that? I mean, these biometric signals that we're able to gather are in essence just a pattern, and once you establish the rhythm of that pattern, you can predict future patterns. So that was the original basic concept of a real-time monitor with some predictive capabilities for astronauts for use aboard the International Space Station. We then went on to win, my co-founder and I, the NASA Global Award for Best Use of Hardware in 2016. And we came to a point of going, well, do we turn this into a research project with NASA, or do we go off and commercialize this ourselves? And we took the option to go off and commercialize it ourselves. And we've been running as a company for the last 2 years. That's in essence the summary of where this all started.
I love that the company's creation came out of something like the NASA Space Apps Challenge. Like, it kind of just goes to show that hackathons can have these kind of spin-offs and unintended consequences that really kind of push us forward and get us thinking about ideas outside that box. Let's talk about the device itself, because when I think about wearable technology, I'm thinking of things like Fitbits, right? But the Canary device is different. It's an earpiece, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about why you came up with like an earpiece for that?
Yes, very much so. Well, one, the issue with Fitbits is that they can't be used for medical research because they're just not accurate enough. Now, there are a few different reasons as to why this is. One of the reasons is actually the location on the wrist itself. This has a lot of movement artifacts that cause interference. So if you're thinking about just jingling a watch around on your wrist, those aren't optimal signals that you're getting for PPG signals, which is what our technology is based on. Now, PPG signals is, in essence, it's the same technology that you'll have seen inside the intensive care units of hospitals for the last 20 years. So it's a red LED and infrared light with a photosensor that detects the light of reflection of the hemoglobin in the blood and then gives you a wavelength accordingly. Now, we ran an analytics suite on this, and from these raw signals, we can pick up on heart rate variability, blood oxygen levels, and respiratory rate. So yeah, we can accurately read respiratory rate from behind the ear. We're one of the first companies in the world to be able to do so. But we're also adding on an accelerometer for head position and a temperature sensor as well. Now, I'm just weaving around to give a bit of context as to why the ear. So once you understand these things, the ear is the best place in the human body for photoplasmography readings. This is because you just read a really thin, blood-rich tissue sample to be able to get these readings from. Now, normally this is very difficult to get from the ear. You'll notice that in intensive care units, they do take earlobe readings, but they tend to change the earlobe every half hour. So the engineering and design challenge for us, or at least one of them, was, well, how can we get medical grade levels of accuracy with these readings, which is the cornerstone to being able to build the kind of predictive medical devices that we want to. So we knew that we had to anchor it onto the ear. Now, the other reason why you get such accurate readings from that is because you don't have as much movement artifacts that interfere with the reading as well. Now, also, the circulatory system that runs through the ear is the same that runs directly through the brain. So if you're thinking about emergency responses, if you have, say, a wrist monitor on, the circulatory system will start to retract itself if you go into shock. So you might end up with a reading from a wrist, which in essence shows that the person is dead, when actually they're fine. And the most accurate way to read this is from the earlobe, as it's the same circulatory system as the brain. It's the last thing that gets cut off in an emergency setting.
The way that this technology is like using blood-rich tissues and light to kind of read blood oxygen levels, is that the same kind of like those devices that you wear in hospital, like on your finger, like a pulse oximeter, or like my Samsung?
Exactly.
Like my Samsung Galaxy, like I can put my finger on and it will tell me. So that's the kind of tech, but a more advanced kind of level that's in your device?
Yeah, spot on. So everything we do is based upon pulse oximetry. So yeah, a good comparison is it's kind of amazing that you can now do a level of this with your phone. But imagine that we just have this to a very high level of accuracy and continuously and unobtrusively monitoring from behind here. So that's, in essence, what we do. And we tend to take it a step forward with the artificial intelligence components of what we do, which is, again, then gathering those biopatterns from our wearers and then using those to predict a serious medical event. Which sounds incredibly vague. I'm happy to go into
I think there's a few different things to unpack here.
Which is the first step into this new field.
Yeah, so you have the device, which is kind of pushing these boundaries and having really high quality and high kind of timestamp data. But then the other thing that you guys are doing is not just a device, but it's also how do you get that data to the people and unpack it in a way that the decision makers can actually understand and use that data, because if you're just giving people numbers on a screen, that's not a good way for them to be able to monitor fatigue, like you were saying. So how's your kind of user interface presenting that to be able to be readable to kind of anyone? I think we've got a couple images of your user interface as well.
Sure thing. Well, in essence, I think it's more like with jazz, it's almost more important to kind of take into consideration what you're not showing versus what you do show. Because if we show the raw wavelengths of what we gather, it's just confusing as hell. Data is not the same as knowledge. But let me go into what we're doing for our first commercial use case, and that should put all the screenshots and the user interface designs into some context. So our first commercial use case is predicting cognitive fatigue in the resources sector. So this causes 2/3 of all accidents in the heavy industry. So think mining, oil and gas, also large-scale manufacturing in Southeast Asian countries, sort of focusing on mining, oil and gas, because these are the biggest catastrophic events. So you can imagine having a micro-sleep at the wheel of a vehicle when you're driving on the road is bad enough, and that can be a serious accident. Now, imagine that the vehicle that you're driving is 3 stories high and is carrying about $8 million worth of coal in it. If that spills over and you wipe other people out, it's just a next level catastrophic event, which is a huge problem to the companies that this happens to. And also importantly for the individuals themselves, it's still a really dangerous industry. So in Australia alone, there are still 2 fatalities in mining on average every month. And this is the safest country in the world for it. So that gives you some context as to what we're solving. So this means that we have to think about our user interface in a few different ways. So firstly, it needs to be accessible to both the wearer on the ground using it and also to the individual who's running a mine site or a control room for an oil and gas company in the control room itself. So I guess we've got this one on the dashboard on the screen right now, right, Lisa?
Yep.
Okay, so let me explain this a little bit. So someone in a control room, let's use the mine site as an example. Let's say it's, open cast coal mining. You might have to keep tabs of maybe 150 workers in one go. So pretty confusing, right? Especially if you're thinking about a wealth of different biometric data, and bear in mind they have controls and monitoring for pretty much all the equipment on the mine site. So the control rooms you've seen today are much more akin to the Apollo missions in the NASA control room, a few decades ago. So it's become really advanced. So you want to simplify this as much as possible and not add the issue of overwhelming alerts that tend to go off at fairly regular intervals as well. So we use a really simple traffic light system to let our control room monitor individuals know what is going on. So you can see a few different categories here. There's red, which is there is a crisis going on with one of your users. Green, totally fine. Yellow, you might want to check out what's going to go on over there. And blue, which means that one person in that group is recovering. So you want to keep tabs of all of these simultaneously. And I guess we can do a test of the next interface. So that would be if you click onto the red one, there you go. And that's an example of what you would see. So we prioritize only showing individuals who are either recovering, at risk, or in a crucial state. Now, I must say, ideally, you would never get to that red state in the first place without systems going live. You would only ever get to a yellow instance. Now, you can clearly see that Dave, with his fatigue levels, has been okay for a while, but has had a sharp plummet. And you can also see that there's a prediction as to what that pattern will probably continue to be like over the next 15 minutes. Now, at this point, when you see Dave's having a critical event, that's when you would pick up the walkie-talkie and just go, hey, Dave, it looks like you're in a pretty bad state right now. You need to take a break. The next one that we've got is how you would change the danger levels. Based on SEG's categorization in the mining sector, there are so many risk factors that one has to take into account. So we can't just take a single look at just the fatigue of the individual. We also want to be factoring in what other risk factors that person will be likely to have on their shift. And of course, we wanted something that was really easy to adapt for control room users, as everyone knows that managers all have their own special type of insanity to them, as do the user. So we needed to accommodate that in our design. But perhaps the most important factor for our user interface that we're working on at the moment is not taking a conventional approach to it. Now, going back to the idea of that guy driving a 3-story truck in the mine site, he may already have to look at 2 or 3 different screens in the vehicle, so already not ideal, and you just don't want that level of distraction. So rather than adding to that problem and insisting upon another screen or even a very smart projection onto the windshield, which is like very cool in concept, but I don't think is quite the right solution for this specific problem, we just have a buzzer in the earpiece itself. So that will just go off 10 minutes at the critical zone before a microsleep would happen. So then you know that you need to stop at that point. So that's, in essence, the long and short of our user interface side.
That's so cool. You were talking about how, it's all based on monitoring fatigue, but the device itself is monitoring the biological signs. So how do you link between the biological signs and this metric of fatigue? Is this where artificial intelligence and machine learning come in?
It's where it starts to come in, yeah. You can actually do some fatigue monitoring without needing to go to that level of complexity of a technical solution. Now, the way that we read fatigue is based on heart rate variability. Now, there are a few different ways to read heart rate variability, and more importantly, a few different ways to read cognitive fatigue. So the gold standard for reading cognitive fatigue would be an EEG reader, but in order for that to work properly to a high standard, you would need about 30 nodes on the head, and manufacturing costs just make that restrictive and in essence impossible to really commercialize. So the next best thing is medical levels of EEG based on heart rate variability. Now, we've just done some in-house validation of this, where we had 5 gamers stay awake for 24 hours, wearing our earpieces, and we've been comparing the heart rate variability. Yeah.
So you have some gamers in your office. Yeah, this one. Tell us what's going on here.
Yes. That's the lab. So this is about, like 12, 18 hours in to the experiment itself. Now, the way that we like to run our medical experiments at Canary, we try to make it a little bit unorthodox and a bit more fun. As one of the things I was doing in the run-up, as part of the first year of design, I put myself through medical tests in the UK to get a baseline for how good the monitoring equipment today was, especially medical grades of it. So I'll be in a hospital bed for 2 weeks straight, being monitored, having blood tests done to me. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this because I'm bored as hell and this is just tedious. So we now prefer to run them as competitions and have more of a fun approach to them. So we needed to gather a substantial data set of at least 24 hours from 5 participants in order to give ourselves like a really strong data set to start building the machine learning approaches to our problem to start the predictive system. So what you're seeing here is you've got 5 gamers who are plugged into their machines. And we ran this as Canaria's quest to find the most hardcore person 2018. So we had a few different comparisons of fatigue levels, including the Stanford sleepiness test. We had reaction tests for all the participants, and of course the Canaria earpieces themselves. So whoever was the least fatigued at the end of it was officially Canaria's most hardcore person 2018. This year's winner was bartender from downstairs, Tyson Hargreaves, who came in with some pretty mean reaction tests for his gaming. And of course, we had the least hardcore person, Hannah Frankish, this year, who won the Booby Prize off a pillow. We also got sponsored by Strange Brew for this. You know, it's more fun to run this almost somewhere between, I don't know, I guess like a party and a contest and a medical experiment. So you can see me doing a glamour pose, thanking our sponsor Strange Brew on top of the 5-gamer rig that we had set up, which is a kind of really intense, caffeinated sparkling drink, which was really appreciated and needed for this 24-hour experiment.
I feel like
and you've got a white. Sorry.
If that's the kind of experiments that are going on these days, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to be a part of. It's so much more fun than doing stuff in a lab.
Well, calm down, Lisa. Open invitation.
We've got a couple of questions from the chat room here. I've got a few here that all kind of are talking to the same kind of topic or theme here. So we've got Hannes Warwerp from Twitch said, is this for everyday use or for patients that are being monitored after leaving the hospital? But then we also had Kitty in our chat room was wondering if it's possible to predict or warn someone before they have a seizure with this kind of device. So looking at the kind of medical industries there for those 2 questions. But Sarge was also wondering if you've been approached by the kind of sports industry as well, because you've said that this device is more accurate than things like Fitbits. So to kind of sum all those up together, what kind of other industries, whether it be medical, whether it be the sporting and athletic kind of fields, do you think that this device could be spun off into?
I mean, absolutely massive. I think, I think the instances in which this technology could provide the best benefit to mankind is the medical sectors. Absolutely. Now, going back to, is it possible to use this kind of technology to predict seizures? Yes, in theory, but we've got a long way to go to prove that. And it's more the data sets to high levels of accuracy is the barrier to be able to making those artificial intelligence systems that can predict epilepsy. So all possible in theory, but we're spending the next, 5-7 years proving that we can do what we can say that we can do. So, Rich, I'm thinking back to that question, is this for everyday use? Initially, yes, if you are an on-the-ground coal mining, oil, gas worker, yeah, this will become part of your everyday life. High levels of data privacy, of course, in order to prevent accidents. Now, would this be used in hospitals? Yes, but we're looking at a 5-year route to market there. So even though we're already building to CE and FDA standards for medical devices, it's a long, hard, time-consuming route to be able to get a new device to hospitals, which, I argue is really where ultimately they belong. So that's our long-term focus.
Wow, we've got a couple more questions from the chat room here. I'm going to combine 2 again together. So from JFro, they want to know if you've looked into adding more sensors to the device, like maybe for sensing like glucose. And then we also have Hannes Wardwarp that's asking, will you be pursuing associated data mining applications that could go with the device to kind of look at the data and find health trends in patients? So I guess, what's the next steps for you? Are you looking at improving the device itself? And if so, what kind of improvements are you aiming to make? Or are you going down the kind of data processing route and looking to improve that first?
In essence, both. What we're trying to get to is developing the gold standard for fatigue prediction. Of right now, it just doesn't exist. It's not government mandated. It's a sector, especially for wearables, which can draw quite a lot of frauds into it, which is, most frustrating if you're trying to cut your tooth as like a highly accurate medical device. So the focus is proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can accurately predict cognitive fatigue. So in essence, yes for both of those. But on the note of mining health data, no, we have no plans to do that in any kind of wide instance. So we target the most important life-threatening questions and try to find solutions to those. Because you open up a whole can of worms as soon as you start doing open-ended research into the data sets that we're gathering. So for instance, we could lose a huge amount of trust with our users if we say we're just going to do whatever research we want on the data sets that we've been gathering from you for the last 3 years. I mean, yes, as a company, we personally would have good intentions for those. We don't intend to jeopardize our users at all. But that's not necessarily the case with all biotech companies I've encountered to date. So no, any kind of research that we would be doing with our data sets that we gather would be publicly announced, and we would be gathering specific permission from our users in order to go ahead with that research as well.
I think it's great that you've kind of considered the kind of ethical direction that you want your business to take, because you're tackling these problems that affect a lot of people, but at the same time, it's great that you kind of show that respect for the people whose health data you are collecting in the process. So what's the next big challenge for you in order to get your product out there? Is it funding? Is it people? If people want to join you or help you out, what can they do to support you? What can our viewers do to help get this out there?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, the next step for us is that we're about to deploy in the field with our first client. Unfortunately, I'm under NDA, so I can't make that full announcement for a few more weeks, which is going to be really exciting. And during that period of time for that project, we're going to go from this rather, I must say, rather sleek-looking kind of countertop case, what we're doing with the wire coming out of it, to truly wireless little earpieces that are only about this big on wireless charging stations. Challenges for us, I think, as any startup, just don't die. Not dying, waking up every day, like coming into the lab. Exactly, just don't die. Easy, just don't die. How can people get involved? I think tweet at me, Team Canaria. I think there'll be some links at the end or during the show, right, to get involved. Check out the website, canariatechnologies.com. Who are we interested in? Look, if anyone's around the Australia or Brisbane area, drop me a line. There are a few things that you can get involved with. So one, we will be fairly regularly doing in-house white papers and experiments. So one, we need both people to take part in those, as well as scientists who may be willing to put in some time to help us with the data analytics of that. So data scientists, fatigue researchers, sometimes we just need an extra set of hands. I mean, we have a core team of 6, but sometimes we need to go up to 10, 15 people for a specific project that we're doing or for an experiment that we're running. So I would say just drop me a line, sign up to our newsletter, and we'll let you know what's really needed at the moment. But yeah, I appreciate anyone who's really passionate about this field getting in touch with me. Like, we're at a size of a business where you can still do that. Like, there are not 3 levels of PAs to get through. If you want to give a helping hand at the company, like, just drop me a line.
I'm incredibly optimistic about what you guys are trying to achieve, and I wish you all the best with getting it out there, because I really think that this is something that can save a lot of people's lives and has a lot of applications. So thank you so much for coming on our show today and telling us about the device. Also, you've been wearing the device the whole time.
Yes, I have been.
Before we go, I do also want to see, can we see the data that's coming off that device? Are you able to show that to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I can just do a quick screen share for you guys. And yeah, this has been running the entire time in the background. So what you're seeing is, so I give it a few seconds to calibrate. What you're seeing are my raw PPG signals at this point in time. Now, this looks a little bit messy. That's photoplethysmography, and no, Have I met anyone who can ever pronounce it properly? No, not even professors at Oxford try saying it on the regular. They reduce it down to PPG signals. So this is the rate at which light is reflecting of the hemoglobin in my blood. So what's the best way to start running into this? So from these raw wavelengths, this is what we can derive heart rate variability, blood oxygen levels, and respiratory rate from. And you'll notice it looks fairly similar to a heart rate monitor that you would see in a hospital, but it's a little bit more complex than that. Now, the current version that I'm wearing is quite sensitive to movement, which is okay for version 1. We specialize in doing peak rate detection. So just whenever you see it reach a peak at the top of the screen, that's the main thing we're interested in right now, as we can derive heart rate variability from that, which is the core indicator of cognitive fatigue for us. You'll notice if you look very carefully, there's a slight undulation on the bottom of the wavelength. Now, if you clean that up, it's like a really slow wave. That's what allows you to get respiratory rate, which is incredibly exciting, as that's a really new breakthrough in this field of medical science.
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much, Alex. What we're going to do now is we are going to head to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have questions and comments from last week's show. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart, brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn, and we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
And Tomorrow Science continues. Now, before we get into our comments from last month's show, a huge thank you to all of the citizens of tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who have contributed $10 or more to this specific episode. They're escape velocity citizens. We also have our orbital citizens who have contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. Our suborbital citizens, people who've contributed $2.50 or more to this specific episode. There are many different reward levels. You've just seen 3 of them. We've actually got even more than that. To find out how you can help crowdfund all of the different shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. Welcome back from the upside down, Lisa.
It is so good to be back. I'm just so happy.
Great interview. Great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That device is so cool. I want one.
Yeah. Well, like
watch my fatigue like on the show. That would be cool.
Oh man. Well, yeah. As the room is like ever so slightly
and we
too
could like
warm.
have it at the bottom, like so you have like a live. Like,
actually, that would be really cool.
So
Watch the host's fatigue level first start going
see
into
my
the
heart
show.
Rate. Just as like we're about to come back from break and we're all running around and it's going to be like
revealing.
I consent to having
you
my
know
data
what I mean?
collected. It's fine.
What if something's triggering?
Oh yeah, you guys have you have no idea what we go through to like break everything down in between the segments so that we can reset everything. So for comments from last week's show, we were talking about the stuff and things, the round table. There we go. About prosthetic enhancements to the future human body. Had to find myself in the room. So kind of getting into that off of YouTube, it's J Tomes 123, I believe that is, who says, you do not cut off an arm, you get an injection of self-replicating nanites that slowly replace what you want them to replace, be it limbs or cells that just die. So
wow. I guess we were being really dramatic saying we just cut the arm off.
Yeah.
But do we have technology that self-replicating nanites?
But that would be cool in the future, right?
I feel like that's something out of Stargate.
But it can also very much, not at all go wrong. Like self-replicating nanovirus. No.
Humanity will definitely survive that. There will be no issues. We'll be
fine.
We'll be fine.
Stop worrying.
And we have to give the
like
nanites
worms.
like, super artificial intelligence too. That's the only way this will work.
Oh,
Yes.
little baby AIs running around in you.
Can you imagine that? Like your arm gets like chopped off and you're like, okay, nanites,
And then
build me a new
blah, blah,
arm.
blah,
And
blah,
then it's
blah.
just like super
Or,
muscly.
but how long would it take though? Because I mean,
But wait, hang on.
worms do that.
That's a huge leap from where we were last week. But, where we were last week was slice off the arm and then you get a robotic replacement that's like all Star Wars.
probably going to
like,
be that's probably going to be like super archaic though by the time that this actually gets implemented. Like, oh wow, you actually cut your arm off. Like, you know you could do it this way.
But that might be an incremental step, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there might be a point where a robotic arm is better than the prosthetics. Right now, that's not the case, right? Your human arm would be better than the prosthetic arm, but there will be an intersection on that graph where they're about the same, and then that technology will likely get better. Biology just doesn't move that quickly. But I feel like there's a huge jump between that and nanites that rebuild your arm all sci-fi style.
I mean, they were thinking ahead of the game. So.
You've made a good point though, like with the machine, like the potential of machine prosthetics versus biology, because you can only build a muscle up so far. You can only get so strong. But once the machines get to that point, that you can only ever just keep improving them. So
I just think we should use like the properties that worms have when they actually can grow back, or lizards when they lose their tail and they can start to grow back. Like if there's a certain length of their tail they lose, they actually could grow that back, which is really cool. Why can't we use that for humans?
Starfish as well.
Starfish? I didn't know that. Another reason to love starfish.
Sea stars.
Starfish on the
Starfish unite. Okay. I'm not a starfish.
Off of YouTube, Fornax. I think the presenter doesn't know what microbiota. Is that how you say
you
that?
got it. Microbiota.
Microbiota means. I apparently don't.
Why biota?
She referred to it as a type of bacteria when in fact it is a community of microorganisms. It's the word you use to describe all the bacteria, viruses, and fungi living in the gut.
Yeah,
so
that's totally targeted to me. So I remember seeing this comment in the chat, and I was like, wait a second. But it's a community of bacteria or bacterium. So that's why I'm just a little bit confused by this, because now, I mean, maybe, I guess it is microorganisms, but I thought from the research that I did is it was a collection of bacteria, which is why the sentence I wrote was, inside the gut there are bacteria called microbiota, but I guess, I mean, thank you. I guess that's a reminder for me to like not focus so much on bio, but I think that from what I did research is it's a collection of multiple bacteria, which the plural form of bacteria, you just say multiple bacteria, you don't have to say bacterium, but you can. So I'm just a little bit confused as the correction here.
I think they're saying that like it's not just bacteria, there's also like fungi and viruses as well together. Like, it's all of them together, that's the microbiota.
Oh, so it's all of that.
Yeah. Everything that's living in the gut. That's
I'm going to not talk about biology anymore.
Everything.
No, you totally should. And mistakes,
Yes.
mistakes and learning are absolutely allowed on this show, and there's no expectation that everyone knows 100% of the things.
Okay.
So corrections are fine, accepted, and I think where I hope we are different is that we'll go, oh yeah, oops, sorry. Right? And if there is this weird expectation that everyone has to know 100% of everything, and we're going to correct you on every minute detail, there's no upside to that. On bigger details or anything where maybe we're a little, we're just wrong, yeah, certainly. But like, oh well, actually the pronunciation of something.
Yeah.
No, there's no need for that, right? That doesn't actually help the message a little bit. So no, I think you can absolutely do biology stories, and
I'm
don't
always
be
asking
afraid.
my best friend to help me with
Don't be afraid of making mistakes. As soon as we're afraid of making mistakes, we're not gonna.
That's why we have you guys.
I think that's why that's why our Discord channel and future other things.
Discourse. We can talk about discourse.
Okay, cool. I was like, have we talked about that yet?
We have not
I love
talked
the
about
pause
discourse.
you just had. You're like, and other things.
I don't know if I can say
the
this.
Escape Velocity members know what we're talking about, but no, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So like, we have a community out there that leave these comments for us, and if we could involve them when we want to do a story, we're like, hey, like, community, does anyone know about microbiota? Like, we want to make this story on it and just have a discussion about it, and maybe they know a part of the research that's really cool and really neat that we could include in our stories. Like, it's kind of a crowdsourced news collection, I guess. A knowledge collection.
That is coming at community.tmro.tv. It is active now. It's linked directly to Patreon, so patrons will actually be able to get their neat little flair, saying what level you're at and all that other fun jazz. I'm in beta testing now. I was going to actually mention it on Space and I forgot. So
You're
science
welcome.
gets the scoop.
You're welcome.
Science gets the scoop.
Heard it here
So there you
first.
go. So yeah, if you go to community.tmro.tv, I'll add it to the tomorrow header so that you'll be able to get to it from there as well. Yeah, that's our new discourse. It's kind of like a forum. So people have been asking for a forum for a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to put science, tech, space all in that one forum. There will be a general area so you can go way off topic. And the general idea there will be that we'll have, because right now we got a bunch of different communication channels. They're all going to remain. We'll still have Reddit. We'll still have all that other fun stuff. But the primary area we're going to grab comments for live shows is YouTube, which we're already doing. The primary live chat, we're like doing real-time things. That remains Discord. And then the primary place where we do kind of that more longer-term conversational, like forum-y type things will be our discourse channel at community.tmro.tv. Those will be the three primary areas where we talk to you. And then, of course, during the live show on the live show page.
We have to throw a party on the day that we do it.
Yeah.
Lots of glitter.
Oh, well, okay.
There's still glitter in this studio from her.
We need to do this.
Oh God!
On
Oh
the
God! It's on me!
chairs.
It's on me! Oh God!
Get it up.
my nails are
It multiplies.
Yes, put it on me.
So you know how you're talking about self-replicating nanites? Glitter.
Self-replicating
is already
glitter?
a self-replicating
I think
nanite.
this is a great idea.
From
Nano
YouTube.
Nano glitter.
Nano glitter. God, this is a
it's gonna get
terrible
into
idea.
It's gonna get into
Moving
your,
on, moving on.
Your pores.
Next thing.
This is
gonna
a
get
hole we do
inside
not
of
want to
you.
go down.
This is Louis Jor.
Louis
Sure.
Sells Jr.
Cool, that's awesome.
Sells
Awesome.
Jr.
That's awesome. A few things that I'd like to see in the show, talking with regards to tomorrow's science. First, a more focus on applied science and technology, especially in the news segment. I mean, particle accelerators, robots, supercomputers, green energy breakthroughs, really anything with hardware. And second, maybe multiple shorter interviews with PhDs and researchers talking about their work, like the podcast Quirks and Quarks. Thanks for being so smart and brave. Cheers from Brazil.
Bye, Brazil.
Hi, Brazil. Awesome. Cheers from America on the upside down.
Organs coming at you.
Good. I think good comments. Yeah, I think I've been pushing for certainly more interviews in science. I think we're done with roundtables for a while, assuming we can fill up the roster with guests.
Keep looking at
Pausing glare. Pausing glare.
Laser eyes.
Send out those
filling up the
LinkedIn
roster
invitations.
with, making sure that we fill up the roster with guests. I think that's a really great format. You know, guests in the middle, and then I mean, I think news certainly more consumable items. I don't think it all needs to have hardware though.
I mean, I think they just really prefer probably hardware. I think that's why the specific person was mentioning it. I think that's really fun. I'll probably start doing those soon. I'm gonna give up on biology for a little bit. I'll start talking about particle accelerators. That'd be good.
Bio-hardware.
Bio-hardware. Like
Biotech? Pretty booming.
Biotech.
Yeah.
There's a lot of topics, but good suggestions. I like that they mentioned those.
I am terrible at biology, so I'm right there. I'm right there with you.
Is anybody really good at bio unless you're like...
I'm going to say a biologist, probably pretty good at biology.
My best friend, really good. That's why she helps me with pronunciations.
She should come on the show and talk about biology. Or
Oh my gosh, Anika.
I can
know
talk
you're
about...
watching right now, you're coming on.
I can talk about pieology. If you want to get into that. It's a pizza place.
You mean like 3? Oh, I thought you meant like 3.1.
Well, isn't there a thing with like, instead of pi, there's the tau or whatever that is? It's double pi and it's supposed to be something. Someone in the chat room.
I would like a double pie.
Sounds intense.
Yeah, it'll be, someone will say what it is in the chat room in like 30 seconds by that time. We'll move on. All right, next up on YouTube, the moon is square. Sure, okay. It's an interesting username. Personally, I love the unrehearsed flow of the show. Conversation. I hate the fake news presenters pretending to be real. I assume they're referring to like news programs and not us.
Yeah.
Or not calling us fake.
Fake news. Cry in the
I
corner.
hope not. Otherwise, it's like, hey. I wonder how they would go trying to present their shows whilst including viewers via chat. You know, we are a different format. We try to make it all inclusive with everyone, hence the chat. I'd like to see more space-related science, though, even if just one topic per episode. That should be a common theme to any Tomorrow show. You know, I tend to agree. The point of Tomorrow Space, Tomorrow Tech, Tomorrow Cities, all of these things is to use it as a way to get people excited about space. That is why we're here. Everyone is nodding their head. We all tend to agree with this. I don't necessarily disagree that having at least one space item somehow wrapped into the show is a good idea. Although we do kind of subliminally do it from our observation lounge in front of the planet Calf.
If you didn't notice.
We're in front of a
I think we always
I like
find like
episode.
subtle ways to put space in the show anyway. Like,
We do.
Like with the
Yeah.
interview
Space cats.
today.
Space cats.
Well, yeah, that. But also, like today, like with the interview, like it started from a NASA Space Apps challenge.
Word.
So we're
Space
weaving
is
space into
everywhere.
there in like little Easter eggs.
I also like they say topic per episode. I thought that was a typo at first, but now I'm like, wait, I like it.
Oh yeah, I've referred to these as episodes for years.
What?
Really?
Oh yeah, it's an
Oh, it's a
episode.
thing.
I'll even write it out, episode. I won't say episode. If you read the show
said
notes,
episode today.
I will almost always write on this episode.
And here I was like, oh, poor Ben. He's just
I know. I was like, he's just going with the
Just
mispronunciation,
typo
but
after
that's
typo.
just.
No. So apparently
language.
Tau Day is on June 28th, and Tau is 6.28318.
We missed Tau
And I was doing a little bit of stuff on Tau. I'm not sure it's actually better than pi, but in many ways, like pi has those weird fractions around and those don't exist on Tau. It's like exactly where you'd expect it to be radially around a circle. And that's actually also how the ancient Romans, Greeks, someone ancient civilization that's no longer around used to do it as well. So
Looking at Tau t-shirts.
there you go. Any final comments before we close out the show?
Tau t-shirts.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. I also want to thank our ground support patrons who helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who've contributed between $1 and $2.49. They get a lot of really great rewards, including their name in the show. I'm talking slowly and not closing this out because there are a lot of names on that list. I want to give you an opportunity to find your name in that list. If you'd like to figure out how you can help crowdfund all of the different shows at Tomorrow and eventually Tomorrow Tech, which I'm excited for, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. That is our show for this month. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching, and we'll see you next month.